Erev Tov Batayim. Let's talk a little bit about the laws of Shabbat. A couple of things I want to tell you. Number one is like this, one time I remember, a few months ago, a friend of mine called me up and he asked me a question. The question was like this. He has to go, to India, some Far East place. He's flying over there. He's got a business meeting. So, the thing is, that the meeting is like on Sunday, Monday, whatever, after Shabbat. So the problem is, he has to, there's no choice for him. He wants to fly on Friday, on Friday, Yom Shishi. And the plane is going to land over there in India on Sunday. You understand? So he's going to be all Shabbat on the plane. This is the question, So the question was, are you allowed to do this, according to halakha?
I don't see a problem.
What is the, you don't see a problem? Huh? Machloket. Okay. So anyway, right, this is a very interesting question, because it involves a lot of things. You have to understand a lot of things to answer this question. So let me just give you a little bit of background, right? What does it say in the Shulchan Aruch about this? In time of the Shulchan Aruch, there was no planes. But there was ships, that people used to sail. There was, right? So what happened was that people used to sail, let's say, before Shabbat, and they're going to be in the ocean on Shabbat. They're going to be sailing on Shabbat. So it's almost the same thing, So what does it say about this in the Shulchan Aruch? It says that if you want to sail on a ship, right, don't go Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Go Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. And then it's going to be Shabbat, it's okay. So they told you not to go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. What's the reason why? So they said, what the problem is, right? If you ever went on a cruise, whatever, right, you know about this. Or maybe you were in the Navy, I don't know, but some of you were in the Navy. So you know what I'm talking about. The problem is like this, when you get on the ship, right, and it starts to sail, the waves, makes you seasick. You can get nauseous and throw up. Yeah, that's the thing. You have to get used to it. That's the whole thing, right? So how long does it take to get used to it? 3 days. This is the rule, That's why they told you not to go Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Why? Because if you go on those days, you're going to be throwing up on Shabbat. Bah! Instead of having seudot on Shabbat, enjoying Shabbat, you're going to be throwing up. This is the problem, So therefore, the rabbis decreed not to go on the boat Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Only Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. What about Shabbat? For sure you're not allowed to go on Shabbat, right? You cannot go on the ship on Shabbat. That's for sure. Okay. So now, let's go back to our question, right? Which is the plane. Yeah? So is there like also seasickness on the plane or not? Not really, Most people throw up on the plane? Most people don't. 99% they don't throw up. Maybe 1%, one guy, something happened to him, he threw up. But usually it doesn't happen, right? So therefore, this decree, what they made on the ship, doesn't really apply to the plane. It's not the same thing at all. It's not the same thing. So then, what's the issue here, right? The issue is like this. The plane is taking off on Friday, okay? Now, the pilot has to be a goy, right? Because if it's a Jew, forget about it, right? Nothing to talk about. Because he's breaking Shabbat. You know what I mean? The pilot has to be goy, right? And so therefore, if it's a Jewish company, El Al, forget about it, right? You cannot do this with El Al. Right? They don't. On Friday they do, but not on Shabbat. Right? The Shabbat they don't fly, right?
They know they catch Shabbat.
Right. By the way, sometimes you should know. Sometimes they go on Shabbat. What does that mean? They do it. So sometimes they break the rules. They're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. You know what I mean? El Al is not the, Hasid company. It's a secular company. Yeah. So sometimes they do, but usually they don't fly on Shabbat. Okay. So, but the thing is, right? Whatever it is, if it's a Jewish company, you cannot fly out with them in this kind of a flight. That's for sure. The pilot has to be a goy. So what does that mean? The goy is doing it for himself. He's not flying for you. If he was doing it for you, it's asur. But he's doing it for himself. He's doing it for everybody there, not only for you. So there's no problem for that. So Goy is doing his job. No problem with that. So the thing is now, what else do we have, right? He's landing on Sunday. Right? In Bombay, wherever he's going, right? I don't know, right? In India. Okay? So, therefore, right, all the Shabbat he was on the plane. So therefore, he has to have over there, I told him, you have to have seudot, kosher meals. Otherwise, how can you do, Shabbat without seudah? Right? How can you, right, you have to make kiddush.
That's not a problem either.
Yeah, you got to order kosher meals. Right? That's the thing, So you got to make sure, right, you have, also, another thing, this guy's rich. So he's not gonna fly coach. He's gonna fly first class, you know what I mean? Or business class, right? One or the other. I don't know which one he does, I'm not really sure, but anyway, right, over there, in first class, you can even sleep there. You can recline and sleep. So it's nice, so you can on Shabbat we sleep, right? We gotta sleep, get a little sleep. Gotta get some rest. That's also important. I said, okay, so if you got the meals, right, you're gonna sleep a little bit, you'll be okay. You'll be able to do Shabbat. Get some kosher meals. You gotta make kiddush, right? All that stuff. You gotta do everything. So I told him, if you can do all this, right, then there's no problem really, according to what we said, about the ship. Same thing, And that's what it says in Yalkut Yosef also. It says like that, that if the plane is going like that, it's okay. But the thing is, lechatchila, right? I told him, preferably don't do it this way, If you can do it a different way, it's better. Why? Because who wants to be, on Shabbat on the plane, you know what I mean? This is not the most beautiful Shabbat. It's not exactly a luxurious Shabbat, luxury. You know what I mean? It's pretty bad. Whatever, but, yeah.
Certainly wasn't his choice.
Right, so that's what he told me. He said, I have no choice. I mean, I gotta do it this way. The schedule doesn't work any other way. I said, okay, if you gotta do it this way, you can do it. That's what I told him. So then he called me back a few months later. He says, Rabbi says, I want to tell you, in the end, I didn't go, I didn't go on that flight. I said, okay, but anyway, it was good. We learned the halakha, We learned halakha a little bit. That was good. Baruch Hashem. That's the rule, If you have to go on a plane like this, you're allowed to do it. But here's the thing, right? Sometimes it happens, by the way, that you took a flight, and the flight, for some reason, landed on Shabbat, Let's say it was late. Landed on Shabbat. Bam, boom. Right?
You have, let's say, charter. That's a problem.
You have what?
Charter flights.
Charter, yeah. Right. So anyway, right, it landed on Shabbat. So what do you do when the plane lands on Shabbat? How do you take care of that? What can you do? So what can you do? Very simple, right? What you got to do is get off the plane, go into the airport terminal and stay there for all Shabbat. You cannot leave. Where are you gonna go? They're not gonna let you stay on the plane. That's for sure, right? They're gonna kick you out. You know what I mean? So you can't stay on the plane. So they're going to tell you, hey, okay, buddy, bye-bye, thank you, bye-bye. They're going to wave to you, right? That's it, you got to go. So you got to, for sure, right, get off and go you cannot take a taxi, right? It's Shabbat, so even if it's a goy, you're not really allowed to do that, Even if it's a goy taxi, you're not allowed to do it. So he gets into the terminal. Maybe, they'll give him some food there. I don't know what's going to be, He cannot pay for it, that's for sure. He cannot buy it, right? Cannot purchase anything. So that's the way it works, But here's the problem, right? The problem is this. What about the luggage? Credit card is also not allowed on Shabbat because you're making purchase, When you swipe it, it's like you're buying, Right, no money, but credit card is also money. It's the same thing, It's just plastic instead of paper. That's what it is. That's all. That's the only difference. It's all the same. Yeah, it's coming out there. It's a transaction. So transactions are not allowed on Shabbat. So here's the thing, right? So what do? You get to the airport. You stay there. You got to wait till the Shabbat ends. Over there. But the problem is the luggage. Right? This happens, by the way, a lot of times. You should know. People get stuck at the airport on Shabbat. It happens all the time. So what do you do with the luggage? There's two problems. You cannot carry the luggage, because there's no eruv there in the airport. There's no eruv. How are you going to carry it? So what you got to do is, tell the goy to do it, right? Tell the goy, hi, how are you, my friend? Can you help me with my luggage?
You got to pay him.
Good man, right? You cannot pay him on Shabbat, right? You can tell him, I'll take care of you. It's okay. You'll be good. So maybe if somebody was working at the airline, he'll do it for you. He'll tell him, listen, I'm Jewish, my friend. I'm religious, can you help me, Somebody will help you, the airline. They'll understand. They understand, They know it's a Jew. They know. They're not living in darkness, They're not. Right? So what you do is you tell the guy, do me a favor, take my luggage, and move it to the terminal, and I'll stay there, and with my luggage. That's what you gotta do, So this is the only way to do it.
You cannot take the car, put your luggage on a cart and what was it called?
Cart. That's what you were saying, right? Cart. Yeah. So the truth is that if the guy is driving it, and it's not only for you, it's okay. You know what I mean? He's not only driving you.
You picking up from the...
Right, yeah. You can go on that. You can go. Yeah, it's not a problem.
You're not paying for it.
Yeah, you're not paying for it, exactly. And there's no payment, there's no nothing, It's just, and he's not doing it for you, there's 100 people over there, right, besides you, So it's okay.
Can you take your sweater to go out?
Yeah, because it's automatic. It's automatic. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. You can do that. That's not a problem. But anyway, right, the point is like this, that this is the way it works, when it comes to trips.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you're in the airport, you got your luggage, you went outside, you already pre-ordered taxi.
Right.
Can you take the, let's say...
Yeah, but you didn't order the taxi because you weren't expecting to land on Shabbat, you know what I mean? So there's no way to,
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Let's say you order...
Theoretically.
Yeah, you order Uber, can you use it?
Right. If you already ordered it before,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Like
And-
part of the day. Or you go
Yeah.
to a hotel, let's say,
Yeah.
somewhere, hotel send the car. to pick
Yeah.
it up.
I'll tell you something interesting. This question that he's asking, I want to get into this a little bit. It's a very important question. There was one rabbi over here. I don't want to mention his name. I don't want to tell you who he is, but anyway, right? He lives in a different location. He doesn't live here, but he's a rabbi here in this neighborhood. Right? So the thing is, that he doesn't live here on Shabbat. He has a house somewhere else. I'm not going to tell you the whole details. I don't want to tell you who he is. Right? Point is like this, right? That he has a problem, because he's got to be here for the services on Shabbat. You know what I mean? So he does all kinds of things, Sometimes he stays with his with his mother, over here. She lives over here. He does all kinds of things, Sometimes they told me he even comes with a bicycle, from there, He comes with a bicycle. I'm not going to get into that now, the bicycle. That's a different story. But anyway, the point is, I told him, I spoke to him, and I said to him, let me tell you something, because you're coming here for a mitzvah, to do the services on Shabbat. It's a mitzvah. So I said, you could pre-order, right, Uber, and have him pick you up, and you can come here. Because when you're doing a mitzvah, you're allowed to tell the goy to do something like this.
Is it going to be a problem to
Yeah.
open the door, lights are going to come on?
So let him do the door. You tell him do the door. You tell him to let him do it. If it's going to light up or whatever, you can solve that problem. It's not really a big issue. And also, it's not your intention, to light to put down. So I told him, I said, listen, you could do this. So he tells me it's like this. He says, yeah, but he says, you know what? He says, if people see me, getting out of a car over here, they're going to think I'm Rasha. They're going to think, they're going to suspect me. So I said, you know what to do? I told him, I said, you know where the hotels are over there by the LIE? Get out over there. You know what I mean? And walk from there. Take the cab until there. Nobody will see you over there. You know what I mean? And then walk over. So he was a little bit scared, when I told him this, he got scared, I told him, but you got nothing to be scared about. When it's a davar mitzvah, you're allowed to take a goyish cab, as long as you pre-ordered it, right? Like you said. Okay, Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen, Amen. רבי חנין, אתה שומע? רצה הקדוש ברוך הוא לעזור כל ישראל. לפיכך הרבה להם תורה ומצוות של מלמד חפץ, למען צדקו יגדיל תורה ויאדיר. אמן.